B'Seder. So to the sound of the chuppah outside, we're continuing the Chodesh Rav Shabbat. Unit 67, as we said, because the timeliness of talking about Pikuach Nefesh. And the Gemara in Yoma says, which raises a few questions. First of all, so you're not allowed. That means enosim. You're not allowed to do a nuchim or a kutim. Now, a day Gdolei Israel is a bit more complex, right? Because what we're saying is you have to find Gdolim and have them do it, right? So if you don't have Rav in your community, you're stuck, right? Shabbat. Right? So clearly, this doesn't really mean that there's an expectation to not Mechal Shabbat El Alidei Gdolim. We have to understand this a bit more like what is the Gemara saying? Because the other side of this is why. What's wrong, right? Pikuach Nefesh Shabbat, 100%. But if you can have other people do the Salva Pikuach Nefesh, so why should I Mechal Shabbat? We could do both. I could pay the goy to do my Chilul Shabbat for me, and I can keep Shabbat. That's better. And that way we kept both. We both saved the person, and I saved myself, and I kept Shabbat. That's the best case scenario, right? With all these cases we have Shabbat that keeping Shabbat could cause the loss of life. Now, what happens if I can do both? I can keep Shabbat and not put anyone in danger. Now, I think I do that most Shabbatot. I keep Shabbat and I don't put anyone in danger. Right? I think most Shabbatot, that's what I'm doing. Right? So why is it that we don't prefer to do both? The most reasonable thing would be, well, if there's no goy, of course, if there's no goy, so usually should break Shabbat, no problem. If there is a goy, so use the goy. Say Tosfot, you can't trust the goy. Say Tosfot, it's mashma that we're worried that the goy won't take it seriously. Now, so I understand Tosfot, of course, lives in Ashkenaz, and you cannot trust any goy there who are tremendously terrible, vicious anti-Semites. If you want to look at all the Crusades, etc., they all came out of there. So Goyim knew that had not to trust Goyim, generally speaking. So it could be they say the guy, you're going to tell him, yeah. So Jews dying. So what? Right. But what happens if I can't trust the guy? If I can trust the guy, what then? Yes. When I was in the army, I trusted my Druze commander more than I trusted my kibbutznik commander. My kibbutznik, he hated the religious guys. He always gave us a hard time. But the Druze, he was great. He was gung ho. He was fantastic. I trust him with my life. I did trust him with my life. What about that situation? In that situation, I can trust the Druze as much or more than I can trust the Jew. So that would be a better solution. So the Rav Yah says, which is mashma that lav davka, right? Lav davka, what the meaning in the mashma pshat the Gemara enosin ela al Gedolei Israel. So that's always a question of how do you read ein ela, right? Hoy kol tzameh lechu l'mayim ein mayim ela Torah. Now, is mayim only Torah or is mayim also Torah, right? I'm trying to, I don't know why I'm blanking on other examples. But the other examples where you see that ein ela can mean one of two things. It can mean not this but that. It can mean not only this but that, right? So, but mashma in the pshat of the Gemara is that you could do that you davka should use Gedolei Israel. The Rav Yah changes to afilu alidei Gedolei Israel. So it might depend on your shikul dad at that moment. If you look around and you say that, you know what, should I use the Jew, should I use the God? All right, either one is fine. That's what the Gemara seems to be saying according to Rav Yah. Let's see, he brings this in the context of Hilchot Yom Kippur, where he says a person who goes into some kind of frenzy and must eat. So what we do is we say, all right, how about you smell it first? Smell the food. Maybe that'll calm you. Maybe I'll make it worse. All right, try tasting some. Just taste some on your tongue. Maybe that'll calm you. Maybe the flavor will calm you, right? Then have less than the kazait. Then you must fine eat. But if you're going in this frenzy, you must eat, fine eat. But you don't rush to that. When I say it's best to rush and just do it yourself, it's because there's no goy who could do it just as well and just as efficiently and quickly as the Jew. If there's no problem, if the guy is there and ready and willing, and I can trust him, so use the guy. Why shouldn't you do both? The Rav Yah really says there's no problem, there's no reason not to. It's reasonable, right? You have a guy, you have a Jew, so the guy shouldn't break Shabbat. The Jew should keep Shabbat. There's no problem, right? As long as there's no problem. If you're worried that you can't trust the guy, so of course you should use the Jew. If there's Pikuach Nefesh, you're not going to run to look for a guy to take care of the Pikuach Nefesh, do it. Don't wait. But as long as there's no difference in terms of efficiency, in terms of expediency, so use the guy, mabaya. The Rambam writes otherwise, and he says there's a problem. כשעושים דברים האלו, אין עושים אותם לא על ידי גויים, ולא על ידי קטנים, ולא על ידי עבדים, לא על ידי נשים. ידי שלא, I know that I don't want everyone to hear, whoever might be in the background there, to hear that statement. If you're in the Beit Midrash, בסדר, but there. ידי שלא תהיה שבת קלה ביניהם, אלא על ידי גדולי ישראל וחכמיהם. So what's the problem? The problem is that women know that they're not as chayv in Sukkah. So maybe they're not as chayv in Shabbos. Avadim know that, right? Eved not Eved, but Eved who's chayv mitzvot, except for mitzvot that says Shazman Graman. So he knows he's less chayav. He might say, oh, Shabbat also. Ktanim, Goim, they'll think they could do things for us, and they're not. They're not supposed to do things for us on Shabbat. So the Rambam says the reason you tell the Jew to do it and not the Goy is because when you tell when you tell someone who might think, why do you use Gdolei Israel v'chachmeihem? Because if everyone sees the Rav doing it, no one thinks the Rav is doing it because he doesn't take Shabbat seriously. But if you tell a woman, she says, oh, if I'm potter from shofar, I'm potter from sukkah, maybe I'm also, so I do them, but I know I'm not really chayiv. Maybe I'm not really as chayiv in Shabbos either. That's not true. You say to the guy, you say to the child, they say, Tov, we're not really chayiv in Shabbos. It was allowed like this, it'll also be allowed in other contexts. So it seems that the goal is to keep Shabbat, to keep them, to maintain the seriousness around Shabbat, their seriousness. Merkavot Mishnah says it's not only theirs, it's also the people who will see, the onlookers. Tama kol hanach da'ru'im שעושים דברים עליו לידי הנח לא ידעו שמישהו פיקוח נפש הוא תראה, אלא היו סבורים שמותר אמירה להנח ויבואו לעשות בעצמם במקום דלק פיקוח נפש. Meaning, what happens? You have pikuach nefesh situation, the Rav goes and fights the guy and tells the guy to do it. The following week, the guy is not pikuach nefesh, stam, he forgot to turn his crockpot on. He tells the guy to turn the crockpot on. Why? Because he saw the Rav doing the same thing last week. It's not the same. That was war. This is stam. But many people don't know the difference necessarily. And they don't know. By the way, I see that this is, forget the war for a moment, forget pikuach nefesh for a moment. I see that this really is, I just want to point out how right the Merkavot Mishnah is. Most people who did not learn the Sugyot think that most things you need on Shabbat, you can tell the Goy Be'Remizah. Most people who did not learn the Sugyot assume basically anything you need. Now, why? Because they've seen that if the light goes off in shul, you go and tell a guy to turn the lights on. They can explain it's correct, but I just want to point out that this isn't so. It sounds very weird to us, like when a person will see the rabbi doing it in wars. Next tomorrow they'll do it also stam. But I see that the chashash is true. We see it really does happen. That people really do think. Someone a couple of days ago said to me, "Wow, but you could tell a guy anything on Shabbos, just beremes, no." Not so much. It's not so posh. We learned this in the past. You can look at the videos are all uploaded, right? So it's not. So that's the chashash. Yaakov wanted to point something out.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if the pshat is not the opposite.
Where?
Of the enosim elei gdolim, isn't it? So that lo yavo lakel b'pikuach nefesh. That to me seems obvious that that's the pshat. Like, yeah.
Pshat in the Rambam or the pshat in the Gemara?
No, the pshat in the Gemara. Like, okay,
Based
so
on what?
this week we'll have a goy handy, and it'll be easy to lechalel Shabbat, without anybody doing any sur d'oraita. But then we'll get used to the fact that we need to like try to do things, and as keeping Hilchot Shabbat away as possible. And in the end, somebody's not gonna lechalel Shabbat when they have to.
I hear you, but I mean, look at the Lashon, the Rambam.
No, barurli that's not what the Rambam says. I'm saying I think that it's, but I'm saying
in Tosfot, what you're saying is true. That Shema Yitetzel Nochi V'lo Yaseh, right?
No, but that's also like Shema Yitetzel Nochi V'lo Yaseh. It sounds like maybe even like in the present circumstance, we're not like convinced,
right?
But I'm saying like, okay, but let's say you're like in your example, you're convinced that the goy, you can trust him now, and so there's no, for the Chilul Shabbat now, it's not a problem, but like ultimately people will get so used to the mindset you still need to like you need to do Bishinui, and you need to do whatever you can not to lechalel Shabbat for Pikuach Nefesh. Ultimately, somebody's going to be a little too careful when.
I hear you, but let's see that in the other poskim. I want to dafka start from these where you see that it's not so. As Tosfot, it sounds more like there is a chashash it won't be done properly, right? The Rambam Pshat and the Rambam is worried about Shabbat, not worried about Pikuach Nefesh. The Rosh takes a similar direction. The problem is you're gonna start looking for a child to take care of the Pikuach Nefesh. Also, and there's also the other chashash. We have a chashash that people. So these are two chashashot, right? The Tosfot and the Rambams, right? What will people think and what people do? But it's not. It's not something that's. It's not a chashash regarding Pikuach Nefesh, right? The Kesef Mishneh takes us another step. If למעט קטנים, ישראל למעט נוכרים חכמיהם, כלומר שהם בני דת, so he ממש minimized, says, what is חכמי ישראל? Those are חייבים במצוות, right? In other words, he ממש minimized the Rambam sounds like, use גדולי ישראל וחכמיהם, the Rav should go do it. The Mishnah says, he means someone who isn't, who won't think that he's exempt in any way. Right. Once again, very much minimizing that. But now to please Yaakov, and I think all of us. In the end, let's see what the other Achronim said. The Taz Mamash completely disagrees with the Kesef Mishnah, and I brought in Archavot, a few other poskim who completely disagree with the Kesef Mishnah and take this in a very different direction. That until now we saw there's the chashash of not taking Pikuach Nefesh seriously enough, not doing it on the practical level, not practicing Pikuach Nefesh well enough. That's one thing we saw. The other thing we saw is people not taking Shabbat seriously enough. And the Taz takes a different angle. Kama v'chama sikil harav et yadav לצאת מפשוטו ולפרש בדוח הגדול. ודאי מה שכתב גדולי ישראל אב למידע איסורה בסתם ישראל כמכוון, אלא מצווה מן המובחר. והכוונה שלא תאמר שיש לעשות על ידי גויים, ואסור על ידי ישראל, אדרבה, מצווה יש בדבר, גדולי ישראל יעשו, נמצא שיש איסור על ידי גוי, עושה עצמם יש מעלה לעושה זה, יעשו דווקא גדולי ישראל כדי לראות הלכה למעשה לרבים. Who are the first 10 people to make sure to be on time with their tefillin before davening? Right? Who are the first 10 people to make sure? Right? Those are the people that take halachot seriously, take Torah seriously, right? The people who make sure that if davening starts at 7, 2 minutes to 7, they already have their tefillin on them and they're ready, right? Those are the people who should do the Pikuach Nefesh. Just like they ran to get to shul on time, they should also run to do the Pikuach Nefesh, right? See the Lashon Reb Chaim. Right. I just want to say the Lashon Reb Chaim for a second. Amar Reb Chaim de lo rak גוף הצלת הנפש הוויה מתיר והדוחה, אלא גם קיום מצווה של הצלת נפשות הוויה מתיר. לכן ניצל על ידי גוי, נישש בחפצה של הצלת נפשות, מכל מקום מפסידים על ידי קיום המצווה. וכדי לקיים את המצווה, יהודי חייב להציב את המסוכן בעצמו, ולא שיוצא על ידי גוי. This is a very, very different angle. Until now, we were saying is this. you have to keep Shabbat. You also have to make sure no one does. You see what I'm saying? You have to keep Shabbat without the price of death. But Reb Chaim says, no. You have to keep Shabbat. There's another mitzvah of saving a life. It's not a negative. It's not what's the least I can do to not break Shabbat in order to save the life. That's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is there's a mitzvah to save lives. So why should the Rav do it? Just like the Rav is the one who always rushes to do mitzvot. The Gdoilim, when the Rambam says the Gdoilim, he means just like if you take yourself seriously, take mitzvot seriously, you rush to keep those mitzvot, so too you should rush to do the Pikuach Nefesh, even though it's Shabbat. And that's the point. So he says it's not that it's usher to be done by a guy, usher to be done by a woman. The point is, those same people who rush to do the mitzvah are the ones who should rush to do any mitzvah, including the Pikuach Nefesh, which is greater than the Shabbat. The Taz Betzim changed the paradigm here. The paradigm so far has been you keep Shabbat unless you must take care of Pikuach Nefesh. He said no, there are two mitzvot. One's called Shabbat, one's called Pikuach Nefesh. And Pikuach Nefesh is a positive mitzvah that you're going to rush and make sure to do. So now have a look in the Shulchan Aruch. כשמחלים שבת על חולה שיש בו סכנה, משתדלים שלא לעשות ידי גויים וקטנים ונשים, אלא על ידי ישראלים גדולים בבני דעת. That's the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Rama, יש אומרים, אם אפשר לעשות בלי דיחוי ולא יכול על ידי שינוי, עושה על ידי שינוי. Like we saw Mashma from Tosfot, and also obviously from the Ravya. אם אפשר לעשות על ידי גוי, ולא יכול כלל, עושים על ידי גוי. וכן נוהגים. So if you can do it b'shinui, it's better. If you do it as a guy, it's better. And not only that, that's also the minhag. The Ashkenazim, Tosfot, Ravya, they say, yeah, that's the minhag. You have to be smart. Of course, if it's going to push out the Pikuach Nefesh, of course you have to do the deal with the Pikuach Nefesh, of course. But that's an of course. If you could, but the argument here is you don't mechalel Shabbat unless you can't have a guy. The Chilul Shabbat only comes up if Shabbat and Pikuach Nefesh really are my only two options. But if I can mechalel Shabbat Rabban, if I can mechalel Shabbat b'shinui, if I can tell a guy to do it instead, well, those are preferable because then I can keep both Shabbat and Pikuach Nefesh. It's all good. The Taz completely disagrees with this, and this is again based on the Reb Chaim. Well, I mean, we saw the Reb Chaim. It makes the Taz is going to be. I mean, the Taz came first, but the Taz takes the same vein. The Azo the Yechid יש איסור לעשות ידי גויים יש לחוש שיתעצל כמה שכתב אחר כך יש חשש שמא אתה מכשילם לעתיד ואם הוא עכשיו שאין עושים רק לידי גויים יסברו שיש איסור לידי ישראל ואם לא יהיה גוי מצוי וידי זה יסתכל יכול במה שימתינו על גוי. So first of all, we have to say what Yaakov said. We should usually say what Yaakov says. That's just a general rule. But in this case, this is exactly what Taz is saying. He says it's not just a matter of what's going to happen today, what's going to happen next week. The guy happens to be here now. But if you see the rabbi saying, the guy, he'll do it. What's going to happen next week? They'll start calling the guy because they think we can't do it. It's Shabbos. And then the Zilzul is in the Shabbos, the Rambam and the Merkava the Mishnah all sound like the issue is Shabbos. Taz says the issue isn't Shabbos, the issue is what's going to happen next week when there's another war. And this already touches on to Reb Chaim. The question is how to read Hazari Zariz Meshubach. I read the Zariz Zariz Meshubach over here in the Yerushalmi, if I ever find it. Over here in the Yerushalmi with Zariz Zariz Meshubach, I read it as a negative thing, saying, don't ask questions. You see Pikuach Nefesh, go for it. Now, is it a mitzvah? No, it's not a mitzvah. It's not there's a mitzvah Pikuach Nefesh. It's, you're not allowed to stop and think because it's dangerous. If you're going to have people stopping to think all the time, that's going to cost lives. But, and therefore, don't ask questions, just do it. It says the Taz, there's a meshubach. Meshubach doesn't just mean don't ask questions. It means there's a positive mitzvah to do here. So who should do it, the guy or the Jew? It's a very different question, right? The other achronim were saying, well, if you have a Jew or a guy, or the guy should do it so the Jew can keep Shabbat. Tov, there are reasons not to trust the guy, not to count on the guy, fine. Chashashot, it's all true. Taz says, hold on. Meshubach, who should be Meshubach, the Jew or the guy? We've turned the whole sugya on its head and said, no. The Jew should do it because it's a mitzvah. Of course you want to grab a mitzvah. Why is that? Why do you want to, since when do you try avoiding mitzvot? Ika de milta, meaning as opposed to the Rama who says there's the minhag, shelo yashgiach al goy kol ikar, mura sakana beverur, ויש אפילו ספק הצלה, הזרעי זה משובח, אם יעשהו בעצמו, אף שכתב רמ"ח נוהגים, אין מזה ראיה, דלאו מנהג ותיקנו. People who take halacha seriously do not follow this minhag. Maybe there are people who don't take halacha seriously, and they follow the Ramaz minhag. The people who take halacha seriously, they don't follow the Ramah here, and they say, once again, as opposed to the Tosfot who said there's a practical aspect of trusting or not trusting. Going the Rav Yas takes the practical down to lemaise. Is there a guy present who could deal with it just as well, right? As opposed to Merkevet Mishnah who says the issue is you're worried about the chashash of what people might think about Shabbat, or the Taz saying what people might think about Pikuach Nefesh. There's another element that the Taz adds about Hariza Azriza Mishubach, and Reb Chaim takes even farther and says, no, Hatzad Nefashot is a mitzvah. You should be rushing to do mitzvot. That's it. It's not a matter of diev. It's not a matter of. So that turns that